Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Oh man, guitars are in on the new recording, Wendy.
Yeah, they are. They're starting to sound like real songs.
And then we're going to be in and we're going to do our vocals on Saturday, and I'm excited about that. Anyway,
Yeah.
new songs for everybody. That's always, that just gives me, chills and the whole deal. I get my heart starts racing a little bit, because I'm in love with the music.
Yeah, me too. And it's so fun to hear the songs start to come to life. I mean, to come to the life of a fully produced song.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's nice to hear, because on a lot of when I listen to the demos of some of the songs, I'm like, oh, that's where I made the mistake, or oh, that's where I just looped something. So to hear something full, that is badass, and that's exciting. So we got guitars in and new music just coming soon, and that's just March 17th we're going to launch it. And it's not just new music on March 17th.
That's right.
Because something else happens on March 17th. What else goes on?
Oh man, I'm so excited. We're doing our first See You on the Other Side live broadcast event.
That's right, St. Patrick's Day. So it's going to be full of green beer and festive. No, it's probably not full of green beer.
You'll have to bring your leprechaun hat.
I might bring my leprechaun
He's got an
hat.
awesome leprechaun hat.
So here's what we're doing. We are doing live See You on the Other Side broadcasts and / acoustic Sunspot performances on the way down to South by Southwest this year. So, and then I think we could do some Q&A and stuff, because we were doing some broadcasting from the van too.
Oh yeah, that's right. Definitely. People can check in on us as we're driving and whatnot.
Yeah, and then we
keep us company on the road.
And that we can do some call-ins and talk about that too, like if people have stories, because I've already been getting on Twitter, people have stories that they want to share.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it might not fit into like a
proper episode.
Yeah, the usual kind of episode where we have themes and stuff like that, but it definitely might. We could work for a Q&A kind of session and talk to some people. And Alton, Illinois, so in St. Louis, the St. Louis metro area, it's got a ton of haunted stories. And we're going to be at a place called Mavis Coffee in a haunted building.
Oh, really?
Yes, in a haunted building in Alton, Illinois. And we're going to be interviewing Alton haunted history expert Luke Neliborski.
Okay.
Yeah, and
awesome.
He does the tours and stuff like that for the Alton Hauntings Ghost Tours.
So he really knows a lot about that area and the history and the
stories. He's an absolute expert on it. So
I can't wait to talk to him.
And it's gonna be fun to do a live thing and play some live songs and everything, because we don't know, who knows what's gonna happen.
We've never done this before, and I'm already kind of freaking out about the technical aspect.
Right. So we haven't even figured this out yet. But we've done live broadcasting before.
Yes, and we've done plenty of live performances.
Right, and we're not idiots. So I think we'll be able to pull this. I believe we'll be able to pull it together. So that's exciting. So it's also Ben's birthday on March 17th.
That's right, yeah.
And Ben's not going to be there for our first couple live shows, but he's going to be down there in Austin with us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll be a lot of celebrations launching on St. Patrick's Day this year.
That's right. And we will. As we near that date, we'll give you all the information for where to go if you live in Alton, and also where you can catch it online.
Yep, you can listen live. You can pick it up later. And also, I'd like to thank everybody who's coming to visit us for the new reviews and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's been wonderful to see.
Yeah, that really has been.
Thank you, friends.
And we're gonna auto-tune the reviews. Coming soon, so you'll have something fun to listen to.
That's right. Yeah. And the reviews are really nice, and we were able to hit our goal for February of 4 new reviews in iTunes. So I think we're getting some new listeners, and I think you guys are helping us out with that a lot by having those reviews so people can find the podcast. So thank you so much. And
I've been bugging people I've been going to meet new people on Twitter.
You
and
were
the
a
thing
stalker.
is, no, there's so many people into paranormal stuff. So I've been going on there. I've been just listening to what people had to say. I've been finding ideas for new topics. And
that's great.
I've been meeting a ton of new people on Twitter and just going in, because before I would just kind of use Twitter to make sarcastic remarks that I didn't want my mother to read because she reads Facebook.
She's on Facebook, yeah.
Because I can't be as vulgar on Facebook because I'm like, mom's gonna see it, and I mean I'm still pretty vulgar, but I want to be a little bit less because I'll hear about it at Christmas, and I want to hear about it at Christmas. So Twitter was the place where it's just like you could let it all hang out.
Yeah. But now you're trying to use Twitter for other
found
things.
a reason for meet and talk to new people and stuff like that. And
That's nice.
Really has been a great resource of finding writers and people who are interested in the paranormal and people that have stories themselves.
Well, I'm gonna have to try that because that's great to meet new people, and anybody who has met Mike on Twitter recently, hello and welcome, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, no, go say hi to Sunspot Wendy at Sunspot Wendy too. And but what some things I like, some things that are interesting is that we're talking about going to Austin, and I'm looking for some people to interview when we're in Austin this year. Or like a haunted location, or a place that has some kind of urban legend associated with it. And Texas is full of people that believe in paranormal stuff.
Ooh.
Yeah. And
well, we know a little bit about that from one of our trips down there.
Yes, we do. No, we went down to try to see if those little hands really did push the bus
across the tracks in San Antonio.
Yeah. And so we made our own little paranormal voyage. I almost forgot about that.
Yeah, our friend Vic had reminded me about that when I was asking him if he's from Austin, and I was asking if he knew of any good sites or good stories around there. And he said, "Oh, San Antonio." And I said, "Funny you should mention that, because we took the van down there, and there's a legend that there's railroad tracks where I guess a school bus was hit a long time ago, and a bunch of children died there. And
if you park your vehicle on the railroad tracks, what happens?
The little ghost children push your car off of the tracks. So, and there's little handprints on your bumper."
And that's really nice. I mean, they're helpful ghosts. But I think the creepiest part about that is that the streets surrounding the railroad tracks all have the first names of children.
It gives me the goosebumps just thinking about that right now, because I remember we were having trouble finding the actual location of the railroad tracks.
Yeah, and then once you find the Brad and Emily Street, you're in the right location.
Yeah, like the corner of, Susan, Louise, and Bobby Joe or whatever. And it's like,
Bobby Joe getting into the Texas stereotypes there. Bobby Joe, that's where she was.
It was just the first thing that came to mind. But anyway, I'm on a tangent, but I see you're right there. I mean, that was one example, but I'll be interested in hearing the other Texan stories, and maybe while we're down there, we can check some of those out.
Yeah, we're excited about that. So that's the good news. We're having a lot of fun, and everything's going really well. New music, live podcast, meeting new friends, and really getting into it.
And just real quick, we do have another live podcast also on the 18th, which will be in Little Rock,
Arkansas.
And I just have to mention this because we're going to talk with this really cool woman, Linda Howell of Haunted Little Rock, and she leads this haunted evening tour there, and she knows a ton about the history and the ghost stories, and just a great person to talk to. So I'm excited for her to share some of that with us while we're in Little Rock, because I don't know that much about Little Rock, but apparently there's a ton of old buildings that have many stories that go with them. So
great. I mean, I know we've played in Little Rock a couple of times, and I know that's the capital of Arkansas. But beyond that, we don't know any haunted history yet, and we're going to change that on March 18th.
Correctamundo.
So that's the good news. We should probably get to the sad news that happened. And that's on Friday, February 27th. We lost, probably, one of the greatest science fiction movie and TV icons of our age.
Prolific.
Yeah, completely prolific. Leonard Nimoy. And so we decided right away that we wanted to make this episode of See You on the Other Side a tribute to Leonard Nimoy. And we pushed off the topic that we were going to do for next week because, I mean, he really, the kind of stuff that we do, he really was like a giant in the field.
Yeah, he sure was. And we were talking about this a little before the recording here, but it is so interesting that the guy, he got the role as Spock, and it kind of, you wonder how it almost like took over the person, because being so involved in a science fiction series like that, and then everybody recognizing you as Spock, and it's almost like he was no longer Leonard Nimoy, but he was, because he was so prolific and he had so many other things that he did. But I just found that interesting.
Well, he was really from a different time. Like, we think about TV stars and movie stars now, and, it's the breaking of the culture. Like, you think about the popularity of TV shows today, and I mean, maybe the number one show on television gets 20 million viewers, but usually not. Usually it's a lot less. And maybe American Idol gets 20-some million viewers. And back in the 60s and the 70s, that number of viewers was not weird for most television shows. Really, so there was a monoculture at the time, and Star Trek hit the right place at the right time. It was just a completely different kind of era where, we make fun of, people for, I guess they would make fun of for being geeks or whatever. But, knowing that tens of millions of people watch the TV show, it's certainly different than today where we have, fandom goes into niches.
Right.
I mean, even if the people that liked science fiction in the 1960s were a smaller part of the population than the general population, it still wasn't like furries. And nothing wrong with furries. I love furries. They're great. I think they're great. Speaking of furries, my cat's name is Mr. Spock. So
that's right. I forgot your kitty. Oh,
yeah. So my cat's name is Mr. Spock, and so he really did embody that character up to the point with that. He had to write an autobiography called "I Am Not Spock" in the mid 1970s.
Yeah, that's kind of. Did you happen to read that or know anything about the?
I read parts of it like 20 years ago, because he also came out with one in the 90s, said that I am Spock, like the updated version.
Yeah.
So,
because I mean, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that was the beginning. So the 1970s really is the beginning of our modern geek culture kind of thing. So that's when you start having Star Trek conventions. That's when you start having fan clubs. People,
cons.
Cons. People dressing up like the characters. I have 3 Star Trek uniforms.
So much fun.
Like that. Yeah. That's.
I borrowed one of yours once.
That's right. I've got like the doctor. I've got the captain. Just in case. Do I want to play doctor tonight?
You never know which one.
Or do I want to be in charge? But that's the thing. So that was really the beginning of the culture. So, that's where, and also actors at the time, there was also a different relationship with the fans. Today they go there, they make $25 or $50 a signature. Conventions are a way to make a lot of money for a lot of these actors, especially for guys that haven't had a job since the 1980s.
Right.
And so back then it just wasn't, it was like, well, we're not, we're artists. We're not going to go to these conventions. We're not going to do these things. It was treated in a different way than it is now. And so when you talk about how Leonard Nimoy was so associated with the character, I think partly because that so many Americans had watched Star Trek, even if it wasn't successful enough to renew after the 3rd season, it was still, it would be considered wildly successful today. And I think we've seen that in that everybody knows who these guys are.
Right.
Like you can say,
even people who aren't into science fiction know.
Right. Everybody knows pointed ears. They know the live long and prosper salute. And,
Yes.
and that's one thing when you talk about being embodied by a character. Like Leonard Nimoy brought pieces of his own life into Mr. Spock, into the show.
Which is so cool. And I think maybe even a little vice versa, too. Right. The character seeped into his life, I'm sure.
Well, so the Vulcan salute, and everybody talks. I know this is an audio podcast. I'm doing the Vulcan salute into the camera over Skype now.
But if you don't know what it is, just you know what it is,
right? You know what it is. And I remember being a kid, and you would try. And I think this is kind of a universal thing for a lot of kids who we grew up watching the TV show. Is you work on it so you can do it. But Leonard Nimoy invented the Vulcan salute. And
I didn't know that. I just, I assumed it was something written into the script.
he based it on the priestly blessing that was performed by the Jewish priests. And they would do one, they would connect their fingers. They would join two hands doing the Vulcan salute at the thumbs. And that represented the Hebrew letter Shin, which has 3 upward strokes similar to the position of the thumb and fingers in the salute. And that letter stands for El Shaddai, which means God, as well as Shalom, which is like the Hebrew hello, goodbye, peace. It's the aloha of Hebrew.
Yeah.
And so that's, he saw that when he was a kid, when his grandfather took him to the Orthodox synagogue. And so now the live long and prosper, Vulcan salute. And you talk about the character seeping in to him. Leonard Nimoy would sign all of his tweets with an LLAP at the end.
That's cool.
So obviously, he gets so, he's so associated and he was, we'd always think of him and you would get excited. And, I think this is a good way to put it. When we talk about, Star Trek is that, William Shatner has been with us. He'll probably never die, but also William Shatner, he's great and he's fun and we all love him. But he's almost a parody of himself, William Shatner is, a parody and he plays it up and that's his character now. They're both, William Shatner's 83 too. So
what?
Yeah, they're both, William Shatner's 83.
That's amazing. He was at,
and he's been wearing a toupee, I think, since he was 33.
Wasn't he at the Madison Comic-Con, or am I imagining that?
No, he was at the Madison Comic-Con.
Because I thought I saw some of our friends had pictures posting with him. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's so cool for a guy of his, level of fame and everything to still be that dedicated to the fans.
Right.
That's not even a huge con, really, as far as
not at all.
They go.
But it's awesome because William Shatner, he does a lot of these things for charity. He does a lot of wonderful things with his horses for charity. And anyway, we'll eventually have to do a tribute to William Shatner, but not today. And
that's right. Yeah. Wait. Let's get back on track here.
But so William Shatner, he's a character in his own right. He's a character of a 1960s television star. And that character is played out to being an action star in the 80s and being a ridiculous character and Boston Public or Boston
I love
Legal.
that show so much.
Yeah, and he was great on it.
So funny.
But Leonard Nimoy just felt more serious. Leonard Nimoy wasn't a joke, or wasn't, his presence wasn't funny.
Right.
And so, a lot of the other Star Trek actors, they're great. But they didn't get parts in anything afterwards.
Yeah.
And, or they didn't have as high profile parts. I know I'm sounding tough on the Star Trek act, but I should feel sorry.
Yeah, you are.
They are sorry for these guys. But, they didn't get they weren't the same kind of high profile characters that William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy were after Star Trek. And so Leonard Nimoy, once he kind of embraced the character and stuff like that, afterwards, he did some things and he was absolutely a pioneer in the kind of things that we're doing today. So, he even had a top 100, he had songs that made the top 100. So Leonard Nimoy was a hit maker.
That's amazing.
He released 5 albums?
Yeah. It was, and it's funny because the first one was I got it here, Mr. Spock's Music from Outer Space.
Yeah, so he did, and this is one of the great things about the synergy of the studios and the recording
science
labels.
Fiction themed songs, where he sings as Spock. So he's already the crossover is he's living as the character in another format, another genre there. Yeah,
and he had hits, not huge hits. But it's Mr. Spock singing "I Walk the Line." It's it's Mr. Spock singing "Proud Mary" in that deep baritone Mr. Spock voice.
And don't forget about the ballad.
We will not forget. And this is the one I remember when this video resurfaced. 10 years, maybe less than 10 years ago, The Ballad of Bilbo Baggins.
Yeah, when people were starting to upload things to YouTube that were like old.
And that is the most ridiculous of any of his things. Like Ballad of Bilbo Baggins is Mr. Spock at his most ridiculous, and Leonard Nimoy doing something. But the thing is, so we talk about the stuff that we do on this show right here. We like to talk about paranormal stuff. We like to write songs with weird themes and science fiction and the occult and stuff like that. And Leonard Nimoy had us beat by 50 years.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not only with the music, but in the writing. But so he produced several movies, television shows.
Yeah, well, so he was on the Star Trek animated series, which in the early 1970s. So that was the Star Trek animated series was kind of like the 4th season of Star Trek. But all the actors returned to it. William Shatner did. That's awesome. Leonard Nimoy did. Like, it was awesome. And I've seen them all, and they're of varying quality, I believe. Like some Star Trek fans will swear by it. I won't, but I will say there's some good imagination in it.
Okay.
But also he goes to Mission Impossible for a couple of years and does an action thing. He's a master of disguise on Mission Impossible. But then in 1973, he makes a TV pilot called Baffled. And he stars as a race car driver who has a psychic vision and crashes his car. Then he teams up with an occult believer, and they're thrust into a satanic adventure. And so his next...
Boy, he's really covering a lot of ground there with the
psychic,
paranormal and
Satan, believer in the occult, the whole thing. So, his next thing that he's going to star as is going to be a paranormal TV show, and that doesn't go too far. But he does... what does go far is he's the host of one of the first shows, and now we're used to all these kind of documentaries about, ghost stories and ancient aliens and Easter Island and all those kind of things, and we're used to it because the History Channel is full of them. A quote-unquote History Channel is full.
Or the Travel Channel.
Yeah, that's right.
Visiting places like Stonehenge.
But, I mean, so his show he hosted was In Search Of. And, he was just the voice. And I remember as a kid, I would see, when it first was on, I was a little too young, so I caught it in the reruns.
Okay.
But, In Search Of was Mr. Spock talking about Easter Island, talking about the pyramids, talking about Eric Von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods. Those kind of things were really exciting. So he was bringing to light, talking about those kind of paranormal mysteries, unexplained phenomena, as he liked to put it, that we talk about in this show, and that shows like Coast to Coast and a million other podcasts talk about. And he really, he was the voice of that, and that was always exciting. It gave
It's a host with a personality, a character that you trust. You feel like you know him already because he's Mr. Spock.
Yeah.
So you're gonna listen to him carefully.
Yeah, and that was the thing. Like that gave it some kind of credibility. Mm-hmm. Like I used to watch That's Incredible too, and That's Incredible was a great show. No, it wasn't a great show, but when I was 5, it was a great show. But That's Incredible had like Fran Tarkenton, who was the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, talking about werewolves and stuff like that. Fran Tarkenton's a cool guy, but he doesn't have that credibility that Mr. Spock has.
Right.
When you're talking about paranormal stuff. And so In Search Of really meant a lot. That was one of those shows.
That's cool. I wonder, are those on Netflix or anything like that?
I'm not sure. The last time I saw them was when they were being repeated on the Sci-Fi Channel in the 1990s.
Oh, wow. Okay. Maybe they're on YouTube. I'll have to do some searching because I'd be curious.
There's probably a bunch out there, and I'm sure there's a bunch on YouTube too. But the quality is always from somebody's 1980s VHS.
Yeah.
And that's horrible.
It's true.
But going back real quick to a couple more things about Mr. Spock, that it's really talked about how he helped develop the character was, something that I almost forgot about. When everybody was doing the Vulcan salute, I'm like, oh man, yeah, the Vulcan salute, live long and prosper, man. Oh yeah. And then I forgot about the Vulcan nerve pinch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
oh, man,
right.
That was
Nobody's talking about that. Like when we were kids, like everybody tried the Vulcan nerve pinch on somebody at least once, and you thought it was when you're a kid, you're like, I bet I can do this.
I can do it if I just try really hard and focus.
Yeah, like I can make this happen. Well, he's the guy. He suggested it because they were looking for a way that Mr. Spock could incapacitate somebody in a non-violent manner, like without a. I mean, I guess
cool.
A nerve pinch is still pretty. You're still knocking a dude out, but it's not a gun, and it's not like
clobbering somebody or
Yeah, I mean, Captain Kirk, William Shatner, he'd use his fists, and
yeah, that wouldn't really be in line with the Spock philosophy.
It wouldn't be logical to just use emotional violence. I mean, those are the things. Like when you think about it, we talk about the salute, we're talking about the nerve pinch, we're talking about the whole idea of, logical, fascinating, all those things that made the character so great and what he brought to the character, and that he brought a lot of himself to it. I think, one of the funniest things is there's an episode of Star Trek called Mirror Mirror, where they go to this parallel universe where instead of the Federation being a force for good in the universe, the Federation is like an ancient Rome. It's like a conquering, it's like a conquering empire. I think they call it the Terran Empire in it. And, William Shatner, Captain Kirk, he gets stuck in the mirror universe and he's got to, find a way back. And the evil Mr. Spock has a goatee.
Right. Was that the first advent of that?
Yeah, that's that's
goatee being the bad evil version of the person.
Yeah, that's how you show. That's how you show somebody like the guy's twin brother. Oh, he's evil. Why? Because he's got a goatee, and it's Mr. Spock with that Van Dyke goatee that just that's great. I mean, that's just what makes the character evil. And so when you think about all of these tropes, cliche, a trope is a cliche. It's something that's been done over and over again. It's shorthand. So when you think of the word trope, think of if you see something quickly, it's shorthand for what it means. So many of our symbols have come from Star Trek, and so many of those symbols have come directly from Leonard Nimoy playing Mr. Spock.
It's so cool.
And and you think how he has influenced pop culture. It's amazing. And I think you can see that when you talked about people's tributes.
Oh yeah,
tributes to him. I mean, the president says something right away,
right
away on Friday. He goes, in 2000, I had a chance to meet Leonard in person. It was only logical to greet him with the Vulcan salute, the universal sign for live long and prosper. And just, I mean, so right away,
so wonderful.
he gets something from the president, and the director of the new Star Trek, J.J. Abrams, who's now working on Star Wars. He said, "Dearest Leonard, what a man you were, what a life you lived, as funny and thoughtful and generous and loving as you were talented. You taught us all at every encounter, and we will miss and love you forever."
Oh,
yeah.
There was a really neat one that I saw online. Some fans in Atlanta, I believe it was, bought a billboard, and it's just a picture of Spock with the
Vulcan salute.
Yeah, the Vulcan salute, and it just says it's all black and white, and it just says "he did," period.
Oh, that is good.
Chokes me up.
That's a good one.
And I like those. I just think that's a neat way for people to express their appreciation of the guy.
To remember the man and all the fun stuff that he did for us. And I'm looking over some of the other tributes, and I love them. I mean, Kevin Smith, the director of Clerks and Dogma and a whole bunch of 90s movies that we all love. He writes in, of all the souls I have encountered in my travels, his was the most human. And that's the speech that Captain Kirk gives at the end of Star Trek II.
Oh, man.
Because at the end of Star Trek II, I don't mean to spoil this for a 33-year-old movie. Mr. Spock dies at the end of Star Trek II. And so that was, and there was real emotional. Like Scotty plays Amazing Grace on the bagpipes as they shoot the the body out to space. And we had like free. My mom got like free drive-in tickets that summer that Star Trek 2 and Rocky 3 were out. Okay. And so I think I saw Star Trek 2 at the drive-in like three times, 5 times. Like and then over the course of the years, I've seen it, forever. And Seth MacFarlane, the guy that he does Family Guy, he's also in that horrible Ted movie, but he's funny on Family Guy.
He's funny.
He is funny. He is funny. Talented singer too. Leonard Nimoy brought us one of the greatest, noblest characters in the history of American storytelling. Someone find the Genesis planet. So that was in Star Trek 3. The body of Spock lands on the Genesis planet.
Oh.
And the Genesis planet restarts his body because it was created they created this Genesis device that could turn a dead planet into a living one. That could create life on a planet. And so that's how Mr. Spock comes back in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. And that was my tweet too.
Yeah, I saw that.
Someone get the body of Leonard Nimoy to the Genesis planet immediately.
Oh.
And it got a few retweets, but not the 12,000 that Seth MacFarlane got. But we'll keep working on it.
That's right. Right. What about the Canadian tribute?
Oh, that's great.
The public. I love this one because this is like an anonymous kind of artistic thing to do.
So Canadians' $5 bill features a large image of their Prime Minister, Sir Wilfrid Laurier, and the note is a shade of blue that's incredibly close to Mr. Spock's Star Trek uniform. So Canadian Design Resource was a website for Canadian designers, and they sent out a tweet that urged Canadians to Spock their $5 bills by taking a pen and by just doing a few...
modifying.
A few things. You add in the eyebrows... the
pointy ears.
Add in some pointy ears, and then you put in the bangs, the Mr. Spock bangs, and a little Star Trek insignia on the collar, and it's called Spockin' Your Fives.
Which is just, I think that's so sweet. Even though it's vandalizing currency, I mean...
Right, it's just currency.
Touching way to like, because that'd be neat. You get your change, you're buying something, you get your change, and then you there's Spock.
Right, that's an awesome...
He lives on.
He lives on in our money.
In our pocketbooks.
Well, in the Canadian money, but, the little dollars.
Yes,
and I love it. And so if you are Canadian, we encourage you to Spock your fives.
Yeah, I wish they could. We need to find a U.S. currency that we can Spock.
Yeah,
it's the wrong color, but
Andrew Jackson's pretty lanky. Like, it might be some work, but Andrew Jackson, I bet we could do. When we talk about Star Trek 3, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, that was the first movie he directed.
Okay.
And then he directed, Star Trek 4, which is probably the best of the original cast movie Star Treks. Star Trek 4 is the one where they go back to 1986. They go back, they traveled and they saved the whales in 1986.
Right.
And I remember that was my birthday present from my godfather was, I'll take you to a movie.
That's
and
nice.
Star Trek 4 was, I knew exactly what movie I wanted to see. I was like, wow, let's go see Star Trek 4. And he directed that, the best of the Star Trek movies. And the reason we want to talk about his directing career, first of all, he directed some good movies, but second of all, he was the director of 3 Men and a Baby.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and so you remember, I don't know if you remember 3 Men and a Baby, Wendy.
I sure do. Ted Danson.
Yeah.
And
who's Tom Selleck at the height of his studliness.
Who was the other dad?
Steve Guttenberg. Yeah, no, okay. Steve Guttenberg, he was in Short Circuit. He was in Cocoon. Steve Guttenberg was a big
80s movie guy.
Yeah, like once you see him, you'd be like, oh yeah, it's a Police Academy. What am I talking about? Steve Guttenberg was the lead in Police Academy, and everybody loved Steve Guttenberg in the 80s. And I always thought he was funny too, but then his mojo died or whatever, and that's too bad. But he was one of the 3 men in the 3 Men and a Baby.
That's right.
Okay, but the reason we want to talk about that movie is not just because it made me laugh a lot in 1987.
And because Leonard Nimoy directed it. Or produced it? Produced?
No, he was the director. Like he was the unofficial fourth man. But anyway, so the thing is that I remember in the 90s when people were renting 3 Men and a Baby, there was a story about a ghostly figure appearing in the background in one of the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like you can see a boy right behind a curtain.
Oh, yeah.
In one of the scenes.
Yeah, yeah.
And the story was that it was
weird.
a ghost of a boy who'd committed suicide.
Oh, my gosh.
And the gun that he had committed suicide with is in the movie too. And then, everybody heard about it. And people would rent 3 Men and a Baby just to say like, oh my God, there's proof of ghosts.
Oh, my gosh.
Right here.
Cool.
And this was before the internet. And before,
yeah, you didn't have 800 like screen captures to look at to just be like Google 3 Men and a Baby ghost.
Right, you had to watch the movie. You had to
go to the video store.
Yeah, you had to pause it at the right spot, just like that scene in Basic Instinct where Sharon Stone uncrosses her legs, and you had to hit it at the right spot.
But with the VHS, you didn't get a clear picture anyway, so you get that little like jiggly kind of.
Yeah, that pause was useless.
Yeah, it was rubbish.
But still, so you could kind of see, and I did it, like, because one of my friends had it on video, I think.
Yeah, and were you convinced?
Well, it looked like, I was convinced that there was a picture of somebody there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the screen captures right now, and there's no doubt there's a kid there.
That's the thing, but here's the real story. That's just an urban legend.
Oh.
The real story is that it wasn't shot in a house where a kid had killed himself. It was shot in Toronto.
In a studio?
Shot in Toronto at a studio. And
somebody's little brat snuck in on the set.
No, that would have been better. You're seeing a cardboard cutout of Ted Danson.
What?
So it's a cardboard cutout of Ted Danson that was a prop for the movie. And I think I remember in the movie, like Ted Danson plays an actor, like a famous actor, as one of, and so that's
That's really funny.
It probably was the cardboard cutout for the movie.
Okay. Yeah, the hair does kind of have the same shape now that I'm looking at it again with that knowledge.
Yeah, and so that's what people are seeing. So is there a ghost in the Mr. Spock directed 3 Men and a Baby? The only ghost is Steve Guttenberg's career.
Oh man, mwah, 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 mwah. That was really like this whole topic is really kind of hilariously tangential to our.
That was just the whole topic. It's the setup for that joke.
That was nice, Mike. Nicely done. I didn't even see it coming.
No, okay. All right. But that's the thing. So his directorial career, Mr. Spock, he directed his first thing as an episode of Night Gallery about vampires.
Cool.
Night Gallery was Rod Serling's show after The Twilight Zone. And so it was a similar kind of thing. It was but they would feature stories from people like adaptations of H.P. Lovecraft and Richard Matheson, who wrote a lot of great horror, I Am Legend and stuff like that. He was also one of the writers. But anyway, he cut his teeth on genre television. So, just going over a little bit of the stuff he did, he also started doing a show about paranormal research in the 1990s called Ancient Mysteries. So he did it again.
Oh man, he's just got so many things.
He's got 1,000 credits. He really does. He was in a lot of things, and he really related to the things that we love. He was a pioneer. I think his last great role was on Fringe, and we talked about Fringe in the episode on LSD.
That's right. Yes, we did. I remember that.
The character Walter Bishop's always doing LSD and trying to get people into different states, and so he has this researcher that he always talks about working with that betrayed him. He's always mad about this researcher betraying him, named William Bell. And it goes all the way, the very last episode of the first season, you finally meet William Bell.
Cool.
And it's Leonard Nimoy.
Mr. Spock.
Yeah, and you're like, yeah, and that was
That's
the thing.
Awesome.
Like,
what a great finale.
Yeah, and it was a great show, and it was a good way because he was really a big character on the show, and that was a good way for Mr. Spock to end it. And I when we look at our some of the things that just my friends on the Facebook wall
Oh, I know.
I realize how much that, and it's probably just because the people we hang around with, Wendy.
It could be, but I mean, it was pretty pervasive. Like my entire Facebook timeline was all Spock.
Yeah.
With a couple of blue and black, gold and white dresses interspersed in there.
Yeah, I mean, that, right, the blue lights. We'll talk about that when we talk about mysteries of the brain.
Ooh.
But as far as, just, I remember putting something on my Facebook wall and everybody just, they show what that character and that actor meant to him. And, you can see that. You look at our friend, Andy has a picture of, his dad dressed as Mr. Spock in the early 70s.
Sweet. It's adorable.
It's a beautiful one. And, that goes to show kind of how that character, Mr. Spock was half human, half Vulcan. He was a little different. And he really stood for people who were a little bit different, who didn't feel like they fit in. And, because Captain Kirk was like the captain of the football team.
Right,
he's
he
like
was this huge stud.
Like he's always bedding green chicks and, getting it on and looking like a stallion. And Mr. Spock was just his buddy, the logical, little different alien friend. And I think that he just meant a lot.
Yeah.
To a lot of us.
Absolutely, for sure.
And I think that just goes to show the power that a really good performance and a really good artist, the power that a really good artist can have on the rest of the world. So
definitely.
No, that's, and if anybody has any other tributes they want to give to Mr. Spock, let us know. We'll talk about it a little bit, but we certainly do miss Leonard Nimoy. But 83 years, good run. It's so prolific. I mean, I think you can certainly say that the man lived long and he prospered. Just absolute no question about that.
That's right.
For our musical tribute to Leonard Nimoy, we wanted to go back to Star Trek V, where his half-brother Sybok was looking for Vulcan heaven. And the name of Vulcan heaven is Shakari, which actually is a play on Sean Connery, who they originally wanted to play Mr. Spock's half-brother Sybok in the movie. So that's the name of this track, Mr. Spock Goes to Vulcan Heaven, Shakari. Fun and growing up ain't easy when you're just a little different and your best friend is your TV. You might never be a hero or get along with your peers, but you might learn to be human from a dude with pointy ears. Well, the bad guys were always wrong and the good guys always won, and we learned how to play the game. Now my favorite shows, they all star anti-heroes, and reruns just ain't the same. In a world a little sick, we could use some more logic. And who taught you the needs of the many are greater than the needs of the one? And who taught you just wearing a goatee makes you an evil son of a gun? The only one who tried to talk to the devil in the dark, 'cause you were bred from different stock, like those of us who missed the mark. See you in Shakari, my mister. Mr. Spock stopped the jocks taking over in Space Seed, and he always kept his cool when Bones would call him a half-breed. And we all tried the nerve pinch on other kids on the playground. Till 14 at least, I still believe that move could knock you out. Damn, In Search was the show that made it cool for UFOs. It weirded out my little mind, as embarrassing as it could get. He sang a song about the Hobbit. Somebody must have been high. Those of us that can't quite fit could use some more of your logic. And who taught you the needs of the many
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.